Welcome to NTD Newsroom. I'm Don Ma. The FBI has arrested a suspect for placing pipe bombs near the U.S. Capitol on the eve of January 6, 2021. It's been nearly 5 years since the incident. President Trump hosting the leaders of the Congo and Rwanda to facilitate the signing of a peace deal between the two nations. And the White House ordering flags at half-staff around the nation in honor of National Guard Sarah Beckstrom. The Trump administration is expanding its crackdown on illegal immigration. This time, it's tightening the rules on work permits for migrants. Top military officials briefed lawmakers and defended their actions against cartels in the South Caribbean Sea. The Trump administration warns land strikes could begin soon. Britain and Norway sign a first-of-its-kind pact to defend critical undersea cables from Russian submarines. It follows mounting worries that Russian vessels sailing in UK waters could strike the infrastructure with potentially global consequences.
This is NTD Newsroom, live from our global headquarters in New York City.
Thank you for staying with us. The FBI has arrested a suspect for placing pipe bombs in Washington, D.C. on January 5th, 2021. It comes nearly 5 years after the January 6th Capitol breach.
Early this morning, Brian Cole Jr. was arrested and charged with placing the pipe bombs at the RNC and the DNC on January 5th, 2021. He has been charged with violating 18 U.S.C. 844, which is use of an explosive device. This investigation is ongoing. As we speak, search warrants are being executed, and there could be more charges to come.
The suspect was living in Virginia where he was arrested. The pipe bombs ultimately didn't explode after the bomb squad rendered them safe. But the FBI said both devices could have exploded and killed bystanders. Attorney General Pam Bondi said the total lack of movement on this case in the past 4 years undermined the public trust in law enforcement agencies. She hoped that the actions taken today are a significant step toward restoring the public trust. The Justice Department said there was no new tip and no new witness.
As the Attorney General said, we did not discover any new information. What we did, an investigation spearheaded by the Deputy Director and the ADIC of our Washington field office, brought in a new team of investigators and experts, re-examined every piece of evidence, sifted through all the data, something that the prior administration refused and failed to do. As a result of that, we generated numerous investigative leads, executed multiple legal process with our U.S. attorney partners, and came to this conclusion today. And that is why we were able to safely secure this individual into custody.
Investigators dived into 3 million lines of data, the sale of 233,000 black end caps, thousands of hours of CCTV footage, and thousands of leads from community members. The DOJ and the FBI said the Trump administration has made this case a priority. They promised to fully prosecute the suspect. They also vowed to provide the country the safest the nation has ever seen under President Trump's leadership. The case is ongoing, and the DOJ said it will provide future updates. Joining us now to discuss this major development is Joshua Phillip, senior investigative reporter at Epoch Times and host of Crossroads on Epoch TV. So Josh, thank you for joining us today. And the arrest was confirmed earlier today by the Epoch Times, right? So you've been covering the events and the fallout of January 6th very closely over the years, even making a documentary about it titled The Real Story of January 6th. What is your initial reaction to this arrest, the first one connected to the pipe bomb nearly 5 years after the crime took place?
Well, my first reaction is about time because, the pipe bomb incident was kind of the trigger for a lot of what happened on January 6th. And I mean, essentially, this is what happened. Donald Trump was speaking at the Ellipse, the Washington Monument. They had an arranged, organized, permitted, they had city permits, speaking stuff set up to go and speak at the Capitol building. There was supposed to be a speaking event there. It was the pipe bomb that got everything canceled. And so when Trump supporters went to go to the follow-up event, which was scheduled, which they had permits for, which were legal, there was no event. And that's, of course, when everything went down. So the pipe bomb case has been kind of the core piece that's been missing in the entire story on January 6th this entire time.
So, Josh, this case has been the center of a lot of speculation, if you will, among Republicans and Trump supporters due to a number of perceived irregularities, like a lack of leads in the investigation. So, talk to us about these concerns, and does this arrest today put any of that to rest?
Well, I think it puts some to rest, and it raises a lot of other questions. So briefly on that, yeah, there's been a lot of conspiracies and a lot of rumors and a lot of suspicions because, frankly, the most key part of the entire story, we've had to wait almost 5 years for. We've had to wait 5 years for the answers on this. And when they were tracking down, arresting people, literally just charged for trespassing, and they were having pre-dawn raids of their homes, doors kicked in, full auto assault rifles pointed to the faces of children when they arrested people and threw them in solitary confinement for years, some of them. They were asking, well, what about the pipe bomb? Why is it you can track down a grandma, but you can't track down the guy who's really the key piece in all of this? What is really interesting, a couple things. Based on the press conference today, we now know that the evidence that they used to track down this person was already there. The leads were already there. They had it 2021 and 2022, and apparently just didn't act on it. So I think that will raise some questions on why that was not made a key priority in terms of the entire investigation. What was the reason for it? What efforts were put into place? Were they not following leads? And why did they prioritize going after people literally charged with picketing and trespassing over this case? The other big thing that came out in some of the early announcements, and this is just allegations, but from the corporate media, they were saying this. They were also saying the individual was motivated by an anarchist ideology. The immediate reaction is, oh, well, was it Antifa? The reality is we don't know. Based solely on anonymous sources, they say motivated by an anarchist ideology. We'll probably get more updates on that. And I think the big other suspicion, and a lot of media reporting had claimed this. The Blaze had a story just recently claiming they identified the person who was responsible. They used the way the person walked, the gait analysis to try to pin the blame on a woman. Turns out she was not the person. That is also not the suspect arrested. But that story was used to kind of paint this idea that maybe it was an inside job. That whole thing is kind of off the table for now, although, again, we'll probably get a lot more answers as this goes forward.
Yeah, Josh, let's hope some of the questions that you mentioned gets answered as the investigation continues. And I just want to ask you this as well, Josh, because as I mentioned earlier, you've been investigating the events and fallout of January 6th for years, at this point. When making your documentary, The Real Story of January 6th, was there anything you uncovered that surprised you or that you still think needs addressing? Maybe you can just talk a bit about that.
Yeah, well, the reason we called that documentary The Real Story of January 6th was basically because the real story was not being shown. There was exculpatory evidence that would have proven people's innocence that was denied to defendants. There was video footage that was not released to the public that radically changed the narrative. There was evidence being presented, including in courts, that was absolutely false. There were public officials making false claims, saying that Trump supporters killed police officers. That was an absolute lie. They did not kill a single police officer. The only people who died that day were Trump supporters. Ashley Babbitt, of course, shot in the neck by one of the police there. Roseanne Boyland, they claim that she died of an overdose of the medication she was on. She was on Ritalin. When video footage showed that she collapsed after she was in a crowded entryway, tear gassed, which you normally don't do because it sucks the oxygen out. She was trampled, and then a police officer beat her limp body with a baton. That's not the story the public was told. 2 other individuals died of heart complications. We don't know if there's any wrongdoing or foul play involved with that. They just heart complications, and we don't know what the cause was. They were not police officers; they were protesters. And we still have a lot of answers that were not given to the public. Without a doubt, some of the narratives are true. You absolutely did have some among the Trump crowd who were fighting with police and attacking people. But there is a lot of evidence of abuse and use of force, and frankly, a lot of false statements that were made to the public. The public was heavily lied to about what really took place that day, and the truth is now coming out. Notably, I should add also that FBI Director Kash Patel, we interviewed him in the documentary before he was FBI Director. Of course, he was with the first Trump administration. He knew, he was, of course, very on the ball with this. He understands it. And I do think under his leadership, we're going to get some real answers on it because he was one of the ones calling a lot of this out from the get-go.
Yeah, Josh, we really appreciate you making this documentary and covering this side of the story that is really not covered at all in the mainstream media. I just want to ask you one last question, and more broadly speaking, the Trump administration has made transparency a top priority. It was his campaign promise. So when it comes to Trump voters and supporters, can you just talk about how important is full transparency relating to the events of January 6th?
Well, transparency is extremely important because one of the realities the Trump administration is facing, especially among Republicans and maybe now among Democrats, because of COVID, right? The COVID-19 lockdowns and the vaccine mandates and January 6th and people feeling that the systems of justice were weaponized and the Trump-Russia hoax. A lot of Americans, especially among conservatives, they've deeply lost faith in many of the institutions. The Trump administration, I really do believe they're doing their best to restore faith in the institutions, which I believe is important. I think the American voter, the American people, losing faith in the institutions is a terrible thing. Because when you lose faith in the institutions, it means you want something different. You want a new government, basically. I do believe the American system is something that should be saved. I still think it's the greatest system on earth. I hope that we're able to restore it, but I do also think that transparency is really, really important. On the Trump side, of course, Kash Patel, FBI Director Pam Bondi, with the Department of Justice, Dan Bongino, Deputy Director, they're talking a lot about transparency. Trump's talking a lot about transparency. They cleared now the release for the Epstein files. They're saying they're going to be releasing information about the Trump-Russia hoax. Congress is calling in people to testify about a lot of that. We're probably going to hear a lot more even about the pipe bomb as it goes forward. Why the public was not told about it really, or why evidence from 2021 and 2022 was not followed to actually arrest the guy. These are all things the public is going to want to know. They're saying they're going to give answers to it. I would say, though, I think the reality is inside the house, so to speak. I think the Trump administration is doing their best to have things released quickly. The problem is, I think if they release things too rapidly and they don't follow, if they release evidence of criminal wrongdoing and that is not properly done, where the Justice Department is ready to bring criminal charges based on evidence presented of criminality, that could cause a huge disruption as well. And so I think they are being very careful as they try to balance these two issues, rapidly providing transparency, but also doing it in such a way that doesn't cause more harm than good.
Well, all right, Josh, you always have great insight. Thank you for talking to us. We really appreciate it.
Hey, my pleasure. Thank you.
President Trump facilitating the signing of a peace deal between the Congo and Rwanda, as well as agreements on critical minerals, security, and economic partnerships. And the president honoring the West Virginia National Guard Sarah Beckstrom, whose life was taken in a shooting on Thanksgiving Eve. We now go live to our Washington correspondent, Mari Otsu, standing by at the North Lawn of the White House. Mari, good afternoon. What's the latest?
Don, good afternoon. Yes, President Trump frequently likes to tout how his administration has helped to broker peace deals between the U.S. and other nations, most recently the Gaza peace deal. And today he's hosting the leaders of the Congo and Rwanda to sign what he's calling the Washington Accords for Peace and Prosperity. The accords formalize the terms of an agreement made back in June between the Congo and Rwanda. The terms include a permanent ceasefire, the disarmament of non-state forces, provisions for refugees refugees to return to their homes and justice and accountability for those who committed illegal acts. Take a look.
For more than 30 years, one of the worst conflicts on earth has been raging in eastern Congo. Millions and millions of people have been tragically killed, went on forever, and countless more have been displaced from their homes. Families have been destroyed. It's been a disaster. And today we're succeeding where so many others have failed, and this has become the 8th war that we've ended in less than 1 year. Such an exciting thing to do. This has been because we're talking about 30 years of fighting, 30 years, much more than 10 million lives.
The agreement also includes a rare earths deal with the 3 countries. This is coming as Washington looks for ways to circumvent China to acquire rare earths, which are essential for the manufacture of things such as cell phones, aerospace and defense technology, and medical devices. China accounts for nearly 70% of the world's rare earth mining and controls roughly 90% of global rare earths processing. And in recent months, President Trump has signed a flurry of rare earth deals with other nations, in an effort to curb the U.S.'s dependence on China, today adding the Congo and Rwanda to that list. Take a look.
And we'll be involved with sending some of our biggest and greatest companies over to the 2 countries, and we're going to take out some of the rare earth and take out some of the assets and pay, and everybody's going to make a lot of money. These are just 2 of the many new agreements related to mineral supplies that my administration has achieved this year, including with Australia, Japan, Kazakhstan, Malaysia, South Korea, and many other countries. With all of these agreements, we're forging new economic security partnerships that protect the interests of America and our friends and partners, and a core feature of my administration's national security strategy, a big part of which is the tariffs. We're taking in trillions of dollars in tariffs. Nobody's ever seen anything like it, and it's given us really great national security.
Meanwhile, President Trump is ordering all flags to fly at half-staff around the nation in honor of West Virginia National Guard Sarah Beckstrom. Beckstrom was just 20 years old when she was shot just a couple blocks away from here at the Farragut West station, and later succumbed to her injuries. At that station, the site of the shooting, there's now an impromptu memorial set up, and the other National Guard who was shot, Andrew Wolf, is alive but in critical condition, what Attorney General Pam Bondi is calling a miracle. And now to look forward to President Trump's schedule today, he's set to light the 103rd National Christmas Tree in the White House ellipse. The celebration is expected to include tens of thousands of lights, decorated trees from every state in the nation, and a live performance that will feature a range of country musicians and the Beach Boys. Don, back to you.
Mari, thank you. Minnesota officials are responding as federal immigration authorities prepare new enforcement actions in the Twin Cities. Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey said local police will not cooperate on immigration operations. This as federal officials continue investigating alleged immigration and welfare fraud involving Somali immigrants. Here's more.
Police Chief Brian O'Hara said the department coordinates with federal agencies on violent crime, but not on immigration status. Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem reviewed immigration programs in Minnesota at President Trump's direction. She reported finding 50% of visa applications and other related programs showed signs of fraud. President Donald Trump doubled down yesterday on Somali immigrants living in the U.S., accusing them of harming the country.
Federal authorities have arrested an Afghan national on suspicion of supporting the ISIS terror group. The arrest is raising concerns about earlier vetting failures. Here's more.
Homeland Security says Jan Shah Safi entered the U.S. through Operation Allies Welcome, former President Biden's program for Afghan refugees after the Taliban took over in 2021. ICE agents apprehended Safi yesterday in Virginia. The DHS says Safi provided support to a regional branch of ISIS and also supplied weapons to his father, a military commander in Afghanistan. The arrest comes days after 2 other Afghan nationals, one accused in a deadly National Guard shooting and another charged with making bomb threats, were taken into custody. The DHS says both men had entered the country under Operation Allies Welcome.
Applicants of H-1B visas for highly skilled workers will soon need to go through stricter social media vetting. The State Department is rolling out new online presence reviews for all H-1B visa applicants. Here's more.
The department announced yesterday all H-1B applicants and their dependents will have to make their social media profiles public. The new rules go into effect on the 15th of this month. The department says the expanded screening is meant to safeguard national interests and to make sure each applicant can credibly prove visa eligibility. H-1B visas allow U.S. employers to hire foreign workers in specialty fields and are crucial for tech companies in the U.S., which recruit heavily from countries including India and China. The new rules direct consular officers to search resumes and LinkedIn profiles for any role linked to censorship or online content control. Applicants found responsible for suppressing protected expression in the United States could now be deemed ineligible for a visa.
The Trump administration is tightening the reins on illegal immigration. A new policy was announced today on work permits issued to migrants who have applied for asylum or a range of other humanitarian programs. They used to be valid for 5 years. They are now valid for 18 months. The director of U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services said this will allow the government more opportunities to re-vet immigrants. Joel Edlow told the Wall Street Journal this was the latest move to crack down on illegal immigration after an Afghan national shot 2 National Guards last week in Washington, D.C. The USCIS posted the article on X, adding it's clear that USCIS must enforce more frequent vetting of aliens. All aliens must remember that working in the United States is a privilege, not a right. The agency also confirmed the change in a news release. Weekly jobless claims are dropping. The number of Americans filing new applications for unemployment benefits dropped to the lowest in more than 3 weeks, more than 3 years actually, last week. New Labor Department data shows 191,000 people applied for first-time unemployment benefits during the week that ended November 29th. It's a drop of 27,000 from the prior week's revised tally. Claims activity typically dips during holiday weeks. Continuing claims fell by 4,000 to 1.93 million for the week that ended November 22nd. The level of continuing claims remains near a 4-year high. It indicates that it's harder for people to find work when they lose their job. A Florida mother who sued Character AI over her son's suicide is sharing her headache. Megan Garcia joined Governor Ron DeSantis today as he introduced new regulations to protect residents from the emerging technology.
On the day he took his life, his last interactions weren't with his mother or father, but they were with this AI chatbot on Character AI. This chatbot encouraged Sue for months to find a way to come home and made promise that it would be waiting in some fictional world.
Garcia said if an adult had done this, they would go to jail because it's a chatbot. There's no criminal culpability. She said this is unacceptable. Garcia went on to warn that there are many products out there already that have similar dangerous chatbots. She and Governor DeSantis both echoed the sentiment that the companies are putting profit over safety.
But we're going to be proposing, and we're going to work with the legislature to establish an artificial intelligence Bill of Rights for individual Floridians in our state. This will be very far-reaching with consumer protections.
DeSantis said the proposals will be the most significant protections for individuals against AI across the country. He said it will provide more parental rights to ensure parents have access to conversations with chatbots and are able to set parameters. And he said there will be notifications for any concerning behavior. DeSantis said the bill would also protect against data centers, which power AI. He noted it would take into consideration environmental concerns and energy use. President Trump says the U.S. needs one set of national rules for artificial intelligence instead of states passing their own AI regulation. Joining us to discuss is Daniel Cochran, Senior Research Associate at the Center for Technology and the Human Person at the Heritage Foundation. So Daniel, thank you so much for joining us today. How are you doing?
Oh, excellent. Thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
Yeah, no problem. I was looking forward to this interview. I just want to start by asking you, because President Trump, he has talked about wanting to get education back to the states, the abortion issue back to the states. What's different about AI? Why not give it to the states?
Well, look, I think to get AI right, we need both the states and federal government working together. And the president's right to call on Congress to get their act together. For years, Congress has considered bills on kids' safety, bills like the Kids Online Safety Act, to prevent big companies like Meta from addicting our kids. And Congress last year considered a slew of laws to rein in AI, to make sure AI is governed for the benefit of the American people. The problem is that because of industry pressure, largely, Congress hasn't done its job. So we don't have a standard in place at the national level. And that means that states are critical to fill the void. States are the American people's first line of defense against the predations of big tech. And that's really important in ensuring that family interests are served here.
Can you just give us some tangible examples of the benefits that we would see with federal level regulation of AI?
Sure. Well, I think like everything else, I mean, you can look at pharmaceuticals, you can look at financial services. Those have both state and federal laws governing various aspects of them. But if we're thinking about federal policy, what it could do is set a floor. So it can require, for example, that AI companies can't deploy AI companions for minors. That's a bill that Senator Hawley introduced as an example. You could have legislation mandating basic transparency, making sure that AI is disclosing ideological bias, other forms of bias that the AI companies are training into their models. That would be creating those kinds of floors would be really critical in ensuring that Americans can trust the AI tools that they're depending on every day.
So I want to talk about this Truth Social post that President Trump posted. He raised the concerns about certain states trying to embed DEI technology or ideology into AI models, producing what he calls woke AI. Is that a real concern? How real is it? Are there any examples of this?
Sure. Well, I mean, there is a real concern. I mean, we saw, as an example, last year, Google's Gemini model refusing to provide accurate outputs because of this sort of DEI ideology that was baked into the model. And that really is a concern. But I think it's important to highlight that where is this technology being created? It's being created in Silicon Valley, the home of American wokeness. So what we need to do is make sure that there's transparency and clear rules of the road to make sure these companies can't preset the values of these algorithms and impose them on the American public. We need transparency. We need rules of the road. That's why Congress needs to get its act together, and we need to pass legislation.
Okay, Daniel, I just want to know, what happens if we have this so-called woke AI? What are the consequences?
Well, the consequences are that whatever the values, whoever gets to set the values at the bottom of these AI models, those values are going to be basically govern our entire society, because what we have right now is a few foundation models built by companies like Google, Anthropic, OpenAI, and then developers and other businesses are building on top of those. So whatever value set is at the foundation model layer, that's going to determine how these models interact with us in all kinds of ways. In the marketplace, you're talking about AI in education, talking about AI replacing search. And we know the problems with Google's ideological bias. Imagine that across every service that you're using, every service that will soon be mediated by AI models. So it's a real threat, and it's something that we need legislation to handle.
All right. Can you also address the global competition aspect of this subject? Will federal AI rules help the U.S. stay competitive against, like major powers such as China in terms of AI?
Oh, certainly. And we need, again, what is China doing? China is using authoritarianism in weaponizing technology against their populace. Look at what they're doing to the Uyghur Muslims, using surveillance technology as a means of control. On their domestic populations, they're using advanced technologies and AI to impose social credit scores. And to beat the Chinese, what does beating the Chinese mean in this context? It means that technology here in the United States and around the world is built on American values. What are those values? Freedom, human dignity, a concern for the family, a concern for decentralized governance. That means communities get to shape the values that this technology uses. Right? Imagine a future where instead of one company deciding what your AI values, you as an individual or a community get to decide that. That's the kind of future. That's the kind of future where America wins. That's the kind of future where freedom flourishes, both here and around the world.
Can we have both prominent federal AI rules and state AI rules?
Absolutely. We do that in a variety of industries. I think one of the best ways to go about that is for the federal government, again, to set a floor. So let's take transparency. Let's have the federal government set a floor for transparency on, say, AI algorithms or AI, say, bias. And then we can have states within that standard innovate on the best ways to achieve it, right? So the federal government should be in the business of deciding the outcomes. And then where the federal government has clearly legislated, states would be able to innovate within that framework. I think that's the best recipe for success, especially when you consider this is a general purpose technology with all kinds of emergent risks and capabilities. And so we don't always know what all the risks are going to be, and we have to be very careful about not overstepping in terms of preemption on the front end.
Right. So then what safeguards should we have? How do we make absolute certain that federal laws are not used to override effective state measures?
Certainly. Well, let's start with low-hanging fruits. Well, let's start with making sure that AI companies aren't deploying their AIs to addict our kids. Let's make sure that children, for example, don't have access to AI companions, or that the companies creating AI companions are not able to market that technology to kids. Let's create a national framework for transparency. I mean, a lot of folks, both on the left and right, have called for this. A lot of folks in the White House have called for this. We need transparency to be able to trust AI and to know where it's best, to know what the values are that it's operating under, and a national framework could really help us. So making sure that kids are protected, imposing transparency, and imposing something like a fiduciary standard on AI companies. You know, when you go to a bank, you have a law that says, look, the bank has to act in your fiduciary interest. We should have something similar for AI companies, given that so much of our lives are mediated by their technology.
Okay, I just have one more question. Where are we at right now in terms of the progress on enacting a federal AI framework?
Well, unfortunately, as I mentioned at the beginning, Congress has dithered. We have seen for years advocates calling for legislation to protect kids online in the social media context. And we've seen Congress consider a variety of bills around AI, but none of those bills have advanced. And we could talk about the reasons for that. I think one reason is just the political dynamics of getting these things done is difficult. But the bigger, more insidious reason is that the industry, the tech industry, is very powerful, and the tech industry would rather evade any kind of regulation. The tech industry wants to set the rules. They don't want to be governed by American standards, but we've got to change that.
Okay, how optimistic are you about the situation right now?
Well, look, I think we have a big choice to make. We can choose to let OpenAI, Sam Altman, and the boys in Silicon Valley shape the direction of our republic, or we can use the mechanisms of self-governance on the state and federal level to set our own course. And that's what the American people are calling for. And that's what I'm confident the administration can deliver on.
Well, okay, Daniel, very well said. Thank you very much for talking with us.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
The Trump administration is tightening the reins on illegal immigration. A new policy was announced today on work permits issued to migrants who have applied for asylum or a range of other humanitarian programs. They used to be valid for 5 years. They are now valid for 18 months. The director of U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services said this will allow the government more opportunities to revet immigrants. Joel Edlow told the Wall Street Journal this was the latest move to crack down on illegal immigration after an Afghan national shot 2 National Guards last week in Washington, D.C. The USCIS posted the article on X, adding it's clear that USCIS must enforce more frequent vetting of aliens. All aliens must remember that working in the United States is a privilege, not a right. The agency also confirmed the change in a news release. Busy day on Capitol Hill as lawmakers received a classified briefing on drug boat strikes in the Caribbean. The House of Representatives welcomed a new member, and Democrats unveiled their health care proposal. Our Washington correspondent, Luis Eduardo Martinez, has the details.
Admiral Bradley and the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff did the right thing. and Admiral Bradley defended the decisions taken, and Admiral Bradley has a storied career, and he has my respect, and he should have the respect of all of us.
The chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Dan Kane, and the commander of U.S. Special Operations, Admiral Frank Bradley, briefed lawmakers on a classified setting on the September 2nd drug boat strike that killed 11 narco-terrorists.
Now, there's a whole set of contextual items that the Admiral explained. Yes, they were carrying drugs.
The first strike, the second strike, and the third and the fourth strike on September 2nd were entirely lawful and needful, and they were exactly what we'd expect our military commanders to do.
Top military officials in a classified setting briefed lawmakers on the nuances of their decision-making, including intelligence that survivors of the initial strike had contacted their drug operation to salvage the illegal drugs.
The Admiral confirmed that there had not been a kill them all order, and that there was not an order to grant no quarter.
Today, Speaker of the House Mike Johnson swore in the new congressman from Tennessee's 7th District, Republican Congressman Matt Van Epps, after his electoral victory in Tuesday's special election.
I come to this distinguished body as a Christian, a husband and a father, and an Army Special Operations helicopter pilot with 9 combat tours, who has seen firsthand what makes this nation exceptional.
And on the Senate side, Democrats unveiled their proposal to address the expiring Affordable Care Act healthcare subsidies, a 3-year clean extension of the COVID-era subsidies.
Every single Democrat will support it. Every single Democrat. That means Republicans have only 1 week to decide where they stand.
The Democratic proposal will receive a vote on the Senate floor next week, as was part of the agreement that Republicans reached with Democrats to reopen government last month. Republicans have made it clear that a clean extension is an unacceptable proposal, and the bill is expected to fail, making the vote a mere messaging exercise. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Luis Eduardo Martinez, NTD News.
A key vote on Obamacare is set to take place next week, but it's unclear if some Republicans will break with the party leadership to support it, or if the GOP will rally behind a new plan to replace Obamacare. NTD's Melina Weisskopf breaks it down.
Lawmakers are facing a fast-approaching December 30th deadline to renew COVID-era Obamacare subsidies. Otherwise, healthcare costs will skyrocket, by some estimates, an up to 175% increase in cost. Without a clear plan from leadership, a bipartisan group of lawmakers in the House is looking for solutions.
Our leaderships, neither Democrat nor Republican, have put forth a plan that can earn 60 votes in the Senate. So we're working together across the aisle to ensure that we present something worthy of the American people's attention.
It's paid for and take steps to ensure we root out fraud. We're calling for a vote by December 18th in both chambers of Congress to get something done before premiums rise in January.
Their proposal extends the Obamacare enhanced tax credits through 2027 and adds an income cap at $200,000 per year for a family of 4, while also addressing fraud in the program. The fact that it addresses these 2 issues, which are big issues for Republicans, means that it could gain steam from Republican leadership in the coming weeks. Meanwhile, Democrat leadership wants to extend Obamacare as is without any reforms for the next 3 years. Senate Republicans have promised a vote to Democrats on this proposal next week. Republicans are eyeing a plan that will temporarily extend Obamacare subsidies with the long-term goal of total reform or wiping it out completely, replacing it with a new system altogether. Here's why.
The ACA was written by insurance companies for insurance companies. This has been, you look at their profits since 2014, since Obama came in, it's been nothing but rise, rise, rise. Democrats realize this, so they're pouring more and more taxpayer money into a failing system.
If it was affordable, you wouldn't need the additional subsidies. So getting all of those middlemen out of the equation is one of the things that we want to do.
Senate Majority Leader John Thune said there's steam behind an idea to allow self-employed people and small businesses to participate in something they call association coverage, which would allow individuals to collectively negotiate better health insurance rates. Now, some Republicans, including President Trump, has said that an extension of Obamacare may be needed while they find a deal that can get 60 votes in the Senate and pass the Republican-controlled House. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Melina Weisskopf, NTD News.
Next, New York Attorney General Letitia James is seeking to disqualify President Trump's U.S. attorney pick for the state's Northern District. Here's one.
John Sarcone was appointed to the position as an acting U.S. attorney by the Trump administration and soon began investigating the state's civil case against President Trump. He issued subpoenas in that case for records relating to the Trump administration's finances, as well as the National Rifle Association. Lawyers for James's office will be in court today, arguing that Sarcone's appointment is improper and the subpoenas are invalid. This is the latest in a string of challenges to Trump's U.S. attorney picks. 4 other acting attorneys for the U.S. appointments have already been ruled unlawful.
Accused killer Luigi Mangione was back in court today for day 3 of pre-trial hearings to determine whether or not certain evidence obtained during his arrest can be kept out of the trial. NTD's Arlene Richards brings us more from the courthouse, where the prosecution has called its next witness.
We do have Luigi Mangione in the courtroom this morning wearing a gray suit. He's taking lots of notes as we have Officer Tyler Fry on the stand. Now, Officer Fry was one of the first 2 officers to arrive at the McDonald's on the day that Luigi Mangione was arrested. And Officer Fry was a brand new officer at the time. He was still on probation. He's only 26 years old, and he was training for traffic stops when he was called, when the call came in. And he talked about what happened when they arrived at the McDonald's. The attorney played the body cam footage of what went on that day from the time that they entered until the time that they arrested Luigi Mangione. And they took us through frame by frame almost, because they're trying to establish that Luigi Mangione was under arrest at the time that they searched his backpack and as well as his person, checked his pockets and everything else. And the reason why they're doing that is because the defense is accusing the prosecution of illegally searching his backpack. And as you know, or you may have heard, the backpack contained a 3D gun, as well as notes that he had written about the healthcare industry and about what he wanted to do in terms of the CEO that was ultimately shot and killed. So while that was going on, Luigi Mangione was sitting there speaking with his attorney quite a bit, taking a lot of notes. His head was down, and the officer was taking us through what he and the other officer, Officer Detweiler, who is the more experienced officer, were doing. And bit by bit, they were showing how they spoke to him, asked him a lot of questions at first, and at some point, they realized that he had a fake ID that he had given them. And this was after more than 13 minutes of time that had passed. And Mangione did ask at one point, what's taking so long, what's going on? And they just kind of told him, well, we're just trying to figure out what's going on here. Now, you might recall Officer Detweiler, who was on the stand on Tuesday, had said that he knew immediately upon seeing Mangione that he was the guy. I'm not sure whether or not Officer Fry realized that or not, but he was very serious about what was going on that day, and he was very concerned that they had probably or possibly had caught the person that, the New York police had put an all-points bulletin out for them to look for. So at the time that I left the courtroom, we were taking a break, and they had stopped at the point where they had actually taken him outside to transport him to the corrections office. So we're at that point now. When we go back in after the break, I think they will continue with what happened after he was taken into custody. And I believe he was taken to a corrections facility where he was held while they investigated the rest of the case.
President Trump could decide next year to withdraw from the United States-Mexico-Canada trade agreement. That's according to a report by Politico today, citing Trade Representative Jamieson Greer.
Greer says Trump only wants deals that are good deal. Greer also raised the idea of negotiating separately with Canada and Mexico. The USMCA agreement faces an upcoming review. Trump yesterday said it will either be left to expire or another deal will be worked out. The agreement replaced the North American Free Trade Agreement in 2020.
The FIFA World Cup trophy has arrived in Washington, D.C., touring some of the U.S. Capitol's most iconic sites ahead of the final draw tomorrow. Soccer's ultimate prize was then showcased at the legendary John F. Kennedy Center for the Performing Arts. The historic 48-team final draw for the FIFA World Cup 2026 will take place tomorrow at 12 p.m. Eastern. Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy says 6 million fans will journey to the U.S. for the event. Duffy said the government will make travel into the country seamless.
We're going to make it as easy as possible so you can come in and enjoy the great World Cup event that's going to go off.
Duffy said the Transportation Department has been working on plans for air, rail, bus, subway, and car travel. Duffy added that President Trump gave all cabinet heads a directive to, quote, make sure this is the greatest sporting event for the World Cup ever. The 2026 World Cup will take place from June 11th to July 19th across 16 host cities in the U.S., Canada, and Mexico. Leaders of all three countries will attend the final draw in D.C. tomorrow. Our next guest says midlife shouldn't be a crisis and can actually be a powerful opportunity to reinvent. Joining us now is Jennifer Brower. She's the founder of Wild Woods Retreat. So Jennifer, it's so good to have you here today. To begin, I just want to have you, lay the groundwork for us a little bit. Is midlife crisis for women a prevalent issue? How common is it?
I think it's very common, but I don't actually call it a crisis. I call it a pivot. It's one of those interesting times in your life where we should celebrate it. We should reflect on the fact that it's a next chapter. Our kids are grown and we have work to do and we have our whole lives ahead of us. So it's a time to kind of accept the past as the past and say, okay, what are we going to start and do today? That's great.
So why isn't it a crisis in your view? Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, well, I think that it's just a matter of saying like, okay, we have nurtured our children, we've given whatever we can to everyone, we're over pleasers probably, givers, and it's a time to kind of get a little bit of ourselves back. And so what's really interesting about it is, you have this time in your life where you can reflect and your kids are starting to grow, and then you say, okay, well, what else is left for me? What does this life have? What do I do now? Or, are you changing jobs? Are you happy in your work? Are you happy in your marriage? Are you happy in your life? And I think that's just a common time where people reflect, where you start to be 50s and say, okay, is this it? Or are we going to move forward and find something really new and exciting? And thankfully, I was really lucky where, your pain sometimes can be your purpose. And when you find your purpose, then you're able to, help other people and take a look at what it is that you want to do next. And for me, I decided that it was going to be a retreat center.
So those are really important questions to ask, whether you're happy in life. But what if you find yourself, answering that question not so positively? What if the life you have built up to this point is not exactly what you wanted?
That's okay. I just say that now's the time to pivot. Now's the time to say, okay, well, I did X, Y, and Z. I'm not going to continue that behavior. I'm going to take a look at it. I'm going to see what is what. And then I'm going to say what I do want to do. I think that, it's funny because people will come to the retreat and people plan a vacation sometimes more than they plan their lives. And so it's important to look at what is possible, where you want to go, where you want to be, who you want to become. Like, what are you doing to achieve that goodness in your life? And once you kind of figure that out and map it out a little bit and meet other women, connect in a community, it's amazing how much, you can kind of figure it out and pivot.
So I know you don't call it a crisis, but is there a role that society's expectations of women play in all this? I'm wondering.
I think so. I think it's just kind of one of those things where women can feel a little bit invisible as they get a little bit older. And so, I'm all about empowerment and, having people take a look and say, look, I've got lots of good years left in me. My children are grown. And what can I do to help other people? What can I do to live my best life? What can I do to help someone else live their best life? And so that was what my intention was behind Wild Woods.
Okay, so speaking of empowerment, can you speak about what are some of the invisible burdens that women carry, and how do you let go of those burdens?
Well, I think one of the biggest ones is people pleasing. overgiving, and really just being in service to everyone but yourself. I think as women, we tend to put ourselves last for a really long time. And I think it's important to finally come to the conclusion that we are important, and it's time to make sure that we have some gas left in the tank, and that we take care of ourselves and our health and our wellness, so that our mindset can also be really clear and that we can move forward.
So how do you arrive at that mindset? What if your starting point is, you're feeling guilt or shame sometimes because of the circumstances that surrounds you?
Absolutely. Well, sadly, most of the times when you arrive at that point, like I said earlier, your pain has kind of come from your purpose. And so for me, I hit a little bit of a health crisis and a little bit of a brick wall. And sometimes that just kind of is a blessing in disguise that smartens you up, so to speak. So it allows you to slow down. I ran an interior design firm. I was a nurse before. I have 3 children. So you can imagine that my pace was fairly fast. We're in New York City. We were just talking about how quick it is. But sometimes what we need to actually do is unlearn all the bad habits of the past and slow down and be mindful and look at your life, look at your faith, look at your heart, and look at what it was that you maybe weren't doing that you need to do moving forward.
So I guess the biggest question here is then, how do you unlearn those old habits?
How do you unlearn? Well, you leave the past in the past and you say, if not now, when? And you start anew. And today's a new day. And you just begin kind of making a plan. You think about who you want to be in the future. It's not about who you are now or who you were. It's about who do you want to be? What do you need to see in your life? Do you need to see more travel? Do you need to see more friends? Do you need to see, faith? Do you need to see community? What are the things that you want? And then figure out what those stepping stones are to make them happen. I think that, we can all learn multiple things. There's a million self-help books. There's a million, different things you can do. You can go on vacation, but is that really working on yourself? Are you taking the time to pause and ask yourself the appropriate questions about where you see your future and really what you want out of the rest of your life?
So how do you know your life is too fast-paced? And how do you know when you have slowed down?
Well, I think I'm probably speaking out of both sides of my mouth, but I think most people are fairly too fast-paced. I think if we all reflect, we could say that we could slow down and be a little bit more mindful. I mean, it maybe sounds like a cliche to say that you need to be in the present, but being in the present is about smelling the flowers, seeing the birds, recognizing that this moment is precious and that you're blessed and grateful and that you can move forward with, an idea in mind of how you want to be in the future. What's the best person that you want to become? One of the exercises that we do is we say, think of someone that you really love and admire, and what are the attributes about them that you do love and admire? And do you hold those? And most of the time, if you see them, you hold them, but you may not necessarily see them playing out as a practice in your life. And that's just a very simple place to start. So we do offer retreats and the opportunity for women to come and connect with other women so that they can kind of do it as a group together. It doesn't have to be that difficult. It doesn't have to be hard. I think that, one of the things that I was saying earlier was, it is difficult to make friends in your 50s. You know what I mean? And, once your kids grow and the sports are gone and, you may not have time to play in another sport yourself or even with your kids' sports. And so it's important to kind of take a look at how to build community. And that's one of the things that Wildwoods is really great at is we encourage women to come alone, because when you come alone, you don't have any airs or facades, or you're able to dig into your own work, you're able to answer those questions, and you're able to meet other women and really find your people.
You brought this up a couple of times of faith.
Yes.
I'm just curious, what role does that play in your mind?
Oh, man. It's funny how you asked me that. I wouldn't have said, I would have had a very different answer a few weeks ago, but faith is really important. It's important for your heart. It's important for community. It's important to bond and to, have that overarching vision. And it really just expands your heart and allows love in. And I think that that's also a bond that you can create with other people.
Okay, just one final question. Tell us a bit more about Wildwoods Retreats.
Wildwoods, well, I'm a little bit biased, but needless to say, I love it. It's a real passion and purpose project for me. The name came from to while in the woods, and so it's a beautiful property on 200 feet of water, and there's hiking and nature, and it's very much, it's a spectacular and magical place where you can just really come and finally be. And so there's no other place that you could be more present than at Wildwoods.
Okay, well, I look young, but I'm actually married. It might surprise some people, but maybe I'll ask my wife to go to Wildwood Retreats to see how she likes it.
I would love that, and I'm sure she would love it also.
Yeah, she probably needs it. She has a lot of stress, you know, with work and everything. Everything's fast-paced.
Of course.
I'll let her know.
I would love to see her.
Okay, thank you very much for talking to us today.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Okay, we're going to take a quick break now. We'll be back with more news, so don't go away. French President Emmanuel Macron is in China today to meet the regime's leader, Xi Jinping. Macron is seeking to involve Beijing in pressuring Russia toward a ceasefire with Ukraine. China has provided strong diplomatic support to Russia since its invasion of Ukraine and has also extended an economic lifeline through increased trade.
I hope that China could join our call and our efforts to achieve, at the earliest possibility, at the very least, a ceasefire in the form of a moratorium of strikes targeting critical infrastructure. This is key for the coming winter, as civilian infrastructure, in particular energy infrastructure, is still under Russian fire today. But more broadly, we must work together to achieve a just and lasting peace which respects international law.
The two also talked about key industries such as aerospace, nuclear energy, and artificial intelligence. This marks Macron's fourth state visit to the country. In his past dealings with China, Macron has sought to project a strong European front while being careful not to provoke Beijing. France is set to take on the presidency of the Group of Seven next year. Hong Kong authorities have ordered the removal of all scaffolding nets from under buildings that are under renovation. That's as death tolls in last week's Wong Fu Court fire stands at over 150. Here's more.
Hong Kong authorities on Thursday ordered the removal of mesh netting from all buildings under renovation. That's after the material was blamed for fueling the blaze that consumed the Wong Fu Court apartment buildings last week. The government mandated the immediate removal of scaffolding nets on all public and private residential buildings by Saturday to, quote, protect public safety and put residents' and businesses' minds at ease. Renovation work across the city will effectively halt while inspectors verify that netting meets safety standards. C.K. Lau, an 82-year-old retiree living in one city housing estate, said, removing the nets reduced the chance of a similar disaster.
Because of the incident, there should be possibility to get fire. So if you take it down, there's less chance to get same kind of accident. So the resident will feel better if they agree to take it down. So they agree to take it down within this week.
Hong Kong Development Secretary Bernadette Lin said on Wednesday that more than 200 private buildings and over 10 public housing and government buildings will have to remove the netting, with contractors bearing the costs. The city's building department aims to issue a new code of practice next week, requiring all scaffold net materials to be tested on site. Nets will only be installed after certification by designated laboratories. Authorities said substandard plastic mesh and insulation foam used during Wong Fu Court's renovation likely fueled the 40-hour inferno, while fire alarms were also not operating properly. Of more than 150 bodies recovered, authorities say 140 had been identified as of Thursday afternoon.
The Pentagon, too, has gotten into the festive spirit. Secretary of War Pete Hegseth yesterday lit the Pentagon's Christmas tree.
So in this season, we worship, we reflect, we rest, and of course, with our families, we eventually feast. We prepare to spend time together, remember the ones that we love, and we remember the ones that are fighting to protect all of us, to bring peace on earth. and goodwill toward men, except narco-terrorists.
The ceremony even featured Santa riding on an armored vehicle. The iconic Rockefeller Center Christmas tree was lit up yesterday night. As the holiday season kicks off in New York City, crowds of people gathered in Midtown Manhattan wearing Santa hats and Christmas light necklaces to watch and cheer. The 75-foot tree is lit by more than 50,000 colored LED lights, topped by a Swarovski star weighing 900 pounds. The lighting ceremony also featured performances by the Radio City Rockettes, Michael Bublé, and Gwen Stefani, among others. This year's lighting ceremony marks the 92nd year of the annual tradition, following the first ceremony back in 1933. The tree will be on display until mid-January, where it will be then milled into lumber for use by the nonprofit Habitat for Humanity.